all. Welcome back to the Location Independence podcast. Today we have Robert, and we're going to be talking about long-term versus short-term investments in the Middle East. And we talk a lot of our focus has been on the UAE because that's where Robert is specialized. But Robert, like a lot of offline talks that we've had, you really have a lot of information about the Middle East as a whole. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Just right out the gate, your vote. Someone gives you a property. Would you do short-term or long-term?
It depends on who developed the property and what the location is. That'll determine whether I do short or long-term. And so I know that's like
Okay, that's fair.
a loaded question or an answer. But basically you look at it like this. Long-term, the developer is key because it's all about quality. Short-term, the developer is helpful, but they're not staying it long enough to find the problems, right? So the owner of the unit will find the problems. But the short-term, renters are unlikely to see some of those issues. Whereas long-term, those issues can be glaring sometimes. So Ellington is a great developer. And Ellington, long-term renters, expats, they know Ellington's a quality product. They will pay more money for Ellington on a long-term basis, right? For short-term, Emaar is great. And because Emaar, they fix things fast, they've got a good product, and they build in the best tourist destinations. And so I would say long-term is a safer way to go because you can hold the property, cap appreciation, less turnaround in terms of the people going in and out. But then you're making less return on your investment in terms of rental return. So short-term, of course. Long-term, you're going to see anywhere from 4 to 10%, depending on the location, type of building, how old it is, who the developer is. In short term, you can see 10 to 15% rental return. And again, that's going to be based on the location and, of course, the amenities of the building and how nice it is.
Right. And so I guess we should actually rewind a little bit for users who don't understand what we're talking about, who don't specialize in real estate. The short term would be, I tend to say that short term is anything rented less than 30 days, but this can be defined, this is defined differently in different markets. So in Europe, anything short term would be considered anything less than 6 months. And I know that in some Middle Eastern countries, it's also considered less than 6 months. Do you know in the UAE, is short term considered less than 30 days or less than 6 months?
Short term in the UAE is mostly like vacation rentals. So some people stay on vacation for 2 months, and that would still be considered short term. The apartments being rented on Airbnb or VRBO or any of those, online platforms in a short term basis. So yeah, it's not the same. Short term here is more, holiday stay. And then long term is going to be a year plus. Normally they don't do 6-month leases. And I'm sure you can find someone who might do a 6-month lease, but a lot of the leases are 12 months plus. And you're writing checks, literally checks, and you're handing them, and they get 12 checks, and every month they cash one of those checks. So it's a little bit different.
So it depends by region, but let's say all things equal, if you had to choose between renting short-term and long-term, short-term is going to give you 20% returns, but higher wear and tear. Long-term is going to give you 10% returns, less wear and tear. Which one are you going with?
If I had you to manage my short term, then I would go with short term.
See, it's a trick question. It's true because actually I had this conversation yesterday with someone who their tenant just left, and we did a walkthrough of the property, and essentially we have to gut renovate the whole place because their tenant left it in terrible condition, just horrible condition. And this is the problem with the long-term tenants. You don't know if they're taking care of things, keeping it in tip-top shape, or if they're just it's turning into a pigsty. Like my current apartment, when I moved in, I made the mistake of renting my current apartment sight unseen. I took a video walkthrough and photos, and I was like, yeah, it's enough. I'll take the lease. And then I came here, and the realtor was like, oh, by the way, sorry, those photos were from a prior tenant. And the current tenant left it in bad condition, and it was horrible. I I told the management company I don't want the apartment. I'm moving out. Give me my money back. But ultimately, I stayed, and I just took 2 weeks to essentially get it back into shape. But when I rent when I manage properties short term, it's actually most of our landlords have said that the property is returned to them in better condition than they gave it to us. And it's true because we're in the luxury space, we want everything to be in the best condition possible for our tenants. So we're constantly going in and fixing things up. We also have cleaners there, depending on the unit. We have cleaners either every other day or every other week or once a week, but there's cleaners there on a regular basis, checking in on the property, making sure that it's being used well. And little secret, if the cleaners report back, like there's a dog there that wasn't reported, or, you know, they're sitting in the apartment smoking. You know, we had one tenant who, honestly, the tenant didn't even leave when the cleaners were there, and he was just popping pills the whole time. And he was completely high out of his mind. And like in all of these cases, we saw that they were damaging the property. And because we were able to have that insight into the property, we asked the tenant to leave. And so by doing this, you're able to actually just get the higher returns and less wear and tear. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
And that's key. And like the reason I said, you know, if it was you or your company managing it, then I would be open to short term, is because, you know, there are some good companies in Dubai, but it's a different market. And, you know, they're not offering room service every day. You can get it if you want, and you're going to pay for it. And I'm sure wherever you're doing business, whether it be Israel or the United States or anywhere, you're going to charge for people to come in on a daily basis or by a daily basis, depending on what they're looking for. And so, but that does keep the property in better condition. But in Dubai, you know, you have to find the right management company, and that's hard. And so you take a risk if you get the wrong one and it's not taken care of in that manner. A lot of people do smoke, you know, like you're supposed to smoke outside, but you know, they smoke inside.
It's
You can't catch that. Yeah, it's the Middle East. So, you know, if you have, you know, someone who's on top of it, then yes, of course, who wouldn't want to rent short term? But a lot of people are afraid because they have heard the horror stories of short term. So like, I'll go with long term. But then again, you just shared a horror story of long term. So it's a double-edged sword. But I think that if you have the right team, short term is the way to go, because you're going to make more money on your investment. And like you said, the property will stay in better condition if the management company is operating according to your standards.
So I do have to counter that with short term is more susceptible to political and natural events. So if you're in Florida, you're going to deal with loss of revenue every time there's a hurricane, because people don't want to, you know, come to Florida on their vacation and just sit inside the apartment because there's a hurricane the whole time. Same goes. We are talking about the Middle East. At the time of this recording, there is a war happening in half the Middle East. And so this is definitely a loss of revenue, even in the countries that are caught in between. A friend went to Jordan recently and she said there was nobody there. She had the whole place to herself. And it's true, because Jordan is caught in between everything that's happening. So she was happy to take the risk and see all of these sites without tourists there. But not everybody is. Not everybody is willing to take that risk. And so anyone who has a short-term property is going to see a loss of revenue, unfortunately, when there's events that kind of scare people away or make them not want to come. Same goes with seasonality. So you are going to have seasonality. Everyone knows that Dubai summers are awful. If you don't know it, I can tell you it is. You open your window and it's like a blast of hot, moist air. There's even signs in the hotel rooms, please don't open the windows. It damages the hotel room. It is this hot. Like if you open the windows, you are melting in minutes. And this is actually why Dubai is putting this walkway, this covered air-conditioned walkway that I think we talked about the last episode. Maybe we didn't talk about it, but they want to put a walkway that's essentially a way to get around the entire city. These people like to walk, and you can't walk in Dubai. And so I saw recently Dubai announced that they are trying to, is it Dubai or the UAE that's trying to double their population in the next 10 years?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's Dubai's initiative 2030 and 2040, Vision 2040. And of course, I'm sure the whole UAE wants to do that, but Dubai is driving that, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah. And so it just means like there's a lot of growth happening. But unfortunately, it's not every area is equal. And so if you buy in the right areas, eventually those are going to become space limited. And so if you're buying in the right areas, and if you speak with Robert and his team, they'll tell you which areas those are. Like, you know that the value of your property is just going to keep increasing, right? So whether or not you rent short-term or long-term, up to you. Personally, now asking me, I will always go for short-term. And the reason I like short-term above long-term, I really like being able to control the tenant and to see what's going on in there. Because there's nothing worse than getting into a property after 1 year, 2 years, and just seeing that the tenant has absolutely ruined the place. But I also like the flexibility. I like to be able to come and use the property if I want to host my friends in a property if I want to. And the fact that I know that I'm making more money on it.
Yeah, you have to
And
make
if you
more money.
yeah. And if you have the right management company, it's all things equal, essentially, in terms of the work required to manage that property, to manage the tenant, because you're not necessarily like taking those phone calls. The management company is. Now, I will say, as a management company, people constantly ask me, why are my fees so much higher? The other management company is only asking for 10% or 15%, and we're asking for 25 to 30%. We're asking for a much higher fee because if a guest calls at 2 a.m. and they can't figure out the internet, we're sitting on the phone with them troubleshooting the internet. Same goes if they're like, no, I really can't figure this out. Please send somebody to sit with me and do this with me. We are literally doing that. I laugh when I think of we had a one tenant who I actually put one of my customer support agents as her personal contact, because this woman would call on a daily basis and talk to my assistant for 2 hours about how to get her channels on the TV. And it was a daily occurrence. So they needed like hand-holding every single day to get her channels on the TV. And she was the sweetest woman. And she just, she comes from a different era. The TV in that unit was super high tech. She couldn't figure it out. And then she actually later became a client of ours because she bought a property.
Yeah.
So,
And she loved the experience that she had, right?
she loved the experience. Yeah, it's true. So there's a reason why our fees are higher, but you as the owner don't have to deal with it. So I say,
No.
because we're talking about location independence, again, it's your choice. It's what you want to do. There are definitely more requirements in terms of keeping the place a tip-top shape, making sure the furniture stays in good condition, if it doesn't come furnished, making sure it's furnished correctly from the beginning. But it is going to be just easier. It should be more money. But again, like if you're calling, if you have questions, I will always sit with all of my clients and look at the data from the last year and look at kind of the current events happening and say, like, listen, either this is going to be a really bad year, but you're going to start to build up your profile and your reputation and trust, and let's do this anyway. Or I'm told, I want to say 75 in New York, 75% of the properties that come to us, we tell them, I don't think you should rent short term. And that's just because they're in areas that are not for tourists. If you're in an area where tourists simply don't want to stay, you're not going to make money. So I do think you need to make this decision before you buy the property, and Robert and his team will help you choose the right property. But at least in the UAE, it depends on the area.
It does, and for instance, speaking on location and short-term rentals is, if you're like saying Dubai Marina, there's certain areas in Dubai Marina where you can get to the beach by walking, and then others you have to go get in the car. Well, if you were to buy an Airbnb there, you wouldn't want to buy on the other side where you have to go get in the car. You would want to buy on the side that you can walk directly to the beach, right? And you're going to get more money for that Airbnb. It's going to be rented 95% plus time sometimes, in most of the circumstances. And that's real data. That's taking data from an Airbnb that is on the side that's 10-minute walk from the beach. They are staying 95% occupied. And they're in an older building that they've just gone in and they remodeled the unit, because there's not a lot of construction going on there right now that's being delivered in the near future. So you have to either wait for a new development to be delivered, or you have to go buy a property and fix it up. And so in that circumstance, in those areas that are not delivering ready, new units, you have to be creative in what units how you renovate it and how you furnish it. And you want to furnish it in a manner that's going to stand out. You want to have amenities that are going to stand out, whether it's a view, whether it's a plunge pool. Plunge pools are great because it gets hot. And about the summer, yeah, it definitely slows down a lot in the summer, but you can have a strategize to mitigate, reducing your occupancy if you do it right in the summer, because during the summer, there's still tons of tourists coming and there's still tons of conferences taking place. And so if you want to mitigate your risk further, you rent next to the Burj Khalifa, but make sure that you have access to Dubai Mall, right? So if you rent near the Burj Khalifa and have a Burj Khalifa view, but you can walk to Dubai Mall in a short distance, or you can walk to all the different places around it, that place is going to rent better during the summer because people are there on conference. And they also want the ability to go to Dubai Mall. It's a huge mall. It's all air conditioned. It's got an aquarium inside of it. All kinds of different cool things that people can entertain themselves during the day when it is hot. So location, 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 right?
Yep. And I want to say, when I talk about, I want to highlight another really good market, which is Turkey. And I don't know, you can consider it Europe, you can consider it Asia, because there's both parts of it. For this conversation, I'm going to include it in the Middle East. It's another one where the long-term contracts are very low price. And I'm saying an apartment that rents long-term for 1,200 euro per month is going short-term for like 6,000 euro, 8,000 euro per month. And they're in this place that I call midterm, which is monthly. So they have a huge digital nomad population. People love Turkey. It's amazing. I love it as well. Great cafes, really good food, really good laid back culture, affordable. And this is another place where I would say, if you're going to invest, you probably want to go short term. Now, on the flip of that is somewhere like Bahrain. In Bahrain, they don't see a lot of tourism. Same goes Oman.
Oman, yeah.
You're not seeing a lot of tourism currently in Oman. So in these markets, Robert, would you go with short term or would you go with long term?
Well, Oman, if you find the right location, you go short term because Oman does bring, it's not driving tourists like, say, Dubai or Turkey, right? But it's definitely driving tourists. And you get a lot of locals that are going to travel there because you can get there by boat within 6 hours. You can take a quick air, you can fly there within a very short period of time. And that's what you see in the Middle East is, the Saudis love to come to Dubai. They love to go to Oman. The Emiratis and the expats in Dubai and the UAE, they love to go to Oman from Dubai. And so Oman's a great place to invest for short term. You just have to find the right location. It's so beautiful. It's like another world when you go there. So definitely look into Oman, but be careful because it's not as tourist driven. So there's only certain areas that you can rent short term. Dubai for me, it's a safe haven in the Middle East. So anytime that, we're seeing, war or, instability, money flows into Dubai, into the UAE, and people come there. So it's so close to where the war is going on, but there's no war going on there. And everybody's accepted, whether you be Muslim, Jewish, Christian, all of them are being accepted. And it's a great, ecosystem for that. The other thing is that with Dubai, like you said, the population is going to grow. They want to double it, and they most likely will. They're doing a great job. They're increasing population numbers every year. And what's going to happen is that if you have a property in Miami that sells for $3 million and it has a view of the ocean, and then you have a property in Dubai that sells for $1 million and it has a view of the ocean, but now you're viewing the Palm, and then you have the Burj Khalifa view, and then you have all the amenities and the 7-star lifestyle and all of the different great benefits that Miami unfortunately doesn't have to offer, right? And the quality of life and the safety. Tell me how that unit that's $1 million in Dubai, 3 million in Miami isn't going to come up to at least 3 million. Right? Miami's property is valued for a reason. It's Miami. It's a tourist destination. It's a global financial hub, XYZ, right? Well, Dubai is a larger global financial hub. It's a larger tourist destination, or it's going to be. And, with all those factors in place, that property that's $1 million is, I don't want to say guaranteed because nothing is guaranteed in life and you don't know what could happen, but it has a higher likelihood of increasing in capital appreciation up to that $3 million because it is a better location than Miami, for instance. And Miami is getting hotter during the summer. It's not as hot as Dubai, but it still gets hot. And the wintertime is great. But you know where the wintertime is even better? Dubai. And that's the strategy. Like I would live in Dubai during 6 or 7 months during the winter and the spring and the fall time. And then I would go back to the United States or Europe during the summer and cool down. Right?
Yeah.
Then I would rent my property out while I'm gone. Maybe I'll rent it out long term to somebody, or if I was, because I know the market, I'll purchase in the right location to where I can still get my Airbnb returns, even during the summer. And so Dubai is a great opportunity, but so is all of the UAE. Abu Dhabi is an amazing opportunity. It's different than Dubai. It's a different lifestyle. Oman's different, but it's also a great opportunity. And then Saudi is even going to be a great opportunity when they're going to do freehold property. So you'll be able to buy a property in Saudi just like you can in Dubai and own it outright. And, then you have Saudi, just like Dubai, driving billions of dollars, if not more, to drive tourists there, to drive business and economic growth there. Saudi's got money, more money. And so Saudi's spending those billions, if not more, to do the same thing. And
Right.
Miami doesn't have that money to spend to do that. New York doesn't have that money to spend to do that. Paris and London, they don't have that money to do that. And so people are like, oh, I'll just go invest in those markets because I know them better. Well, yeah, and then you'll see 3 or 4% if you're lucky. And then you'll be, you'll have the market volatility that's political instability and all these different factors that you don't have to take into consideration in a kingdom. And people say, oh, well, I don't want to go there because if you steal, you get your hand cut off. And I'm like, well, I know you don't steal. So what are you worried about? Right. And it's like,
It's
would you,
true.
would you want to go to Miami and you can get robbed or killed just because you're walking down the street, and or go to Dubai and have never have any of that happen? And they've got a great, they've instilled fear into the criminals, because that's what you need to do if you want to control criminals who don't care about human life or what they're doing or their life in most instances. And so Dubai has done a really good job at all of this. And so if Miami, you can go get, mugged on the street, shot for no reason, but the property's still worth 3 million if you look up because it's on the beach. And there's definitely room for capital appreciation in Dubai. Those properties will outpace Miami and Paris, London, New York City, and all those different global markets because of the quality of life, the infrastructure, and the growth that's been taking place over the last decade and will continue to take place in the next decade.
And you touched on something really interesting. I think we're going to have another episode on that. And it's a theory that I have. And I think a lot of people have this theory, but we're seeing globalization where, it used to be like there were hubs with different, and like everyone needed to stay near the hub because they needed to go to the office, or like, because that's how you connected with people. But now this is happening in like an internet way, like Robert and I knew each other for months before we ever met in person. And so, like this is, you don't need to be in one place anymore. And this means that we're now seeing prices equalizing, and we'll do a whole episode on this. I don't want to get into it because it's a lot, but okay. So all things equal, in the Middle East, you're going with short term.
Yes. At the right location and the right development and the right management company.
I think, and that is the trick. You need to have the right management company or it's going to be a nightmare.
Exactly. And I'll pay Michelle 25% all day long, even 30%. Why? When I travel, I want to stay at the Ritz-Carlton. The reason being is because I know that their brand and the experience I'm going to have is going to be streamlined across the globe, right? And I pay extra. I pay more for that room per night than I would if I stayed at another hotel. And why do I do that? Because I want quality. I want to expect the service wherever I go not to change. I want to expect that the beds that I'm sleeping on, the sheets that I'm sleeping on, the pillows that I'm sleeping on, the towels that I'm using, the food that I'm eating, the people that I'm talking to, the things that I'm protecting in my safe, in my room. I want to know that all those things are going to be there, and it's going to be the same wherever I go, and it's not going to change. It's not going to fluctuate and be better somewhere and worse elsewhere. And I pay a premium for that. And so do most people. You'll pay a premium for something. If you want to drive a fast car, you buy, and you like luxury, you buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or, any type of high-end car. You wouldn't go buy a Nissan to achieve that, but you're going to pay more money than the Nissan. And so I call it pay to play. And so when it comes to management fees, don't be cheap, because that's your dollar. That's your profit center. And if you're cheap and you've created an experience that is not streamlined and maintained across every occupant, well, then you're going to see the ups and downs in your rental rates. You're going to see the ups and downs in your occupancy rate. But when you can create an experience like the Ritz-Carlton, for instance, people will say, well, I like the Ritz and I love the experience, but I would rather stay in a condo or a home when I'm traveling. But I don't want to lose that experience that I get when I stay at the Ritz. So then Michelle comes and she provides this luxurious experience that's streamlined to the point where you have people sitting with somebody in the middle of the night talking to them about how to access their TV. So that just goes to speak for it speaks volumes about how you do business and the customer service and the experience that I as a customer will have. And that is why I would be happy to pay you 25 to 30%, because not only would I want my clients to benefit from you, I choose to benefit from the same luxuries and I pay extra for it. So it's the cost of doing business.
And there's a couple of things to know, and that is, if you're renting short term, we talked about 20% returns. You are getting higher returns. The returns are also in your pocket. So the way that our management at least works, you're getting, like, we're collecting the rent from the tenant and we're paying you out your amount. So when you report on your taxes, say the property made $10,000 and your payout is $7,500, you're receiving a statement for $7,500, and that's what you're going
Okay.
to the tax authorities with. So the fee that's paid to us is like, it's tax-free. So not only are you not having to work, you're not having to take those calls or deal with the handyman remotely or anything. It's tax-free. So it's like, it's kind of if that's what you want to do, that's the best way to go. And the other thing is that, again, think about the fact that you can use the space. So my lifelong goal is to have a home in many places and travel as the seasons. So I actually don't like going to places in high season. I think there's too many tourists there. I like to rent my places in high season and go visit them in shoulder season. So Argentina, I'll go in February, March. I'm not going in January when everybody's there. And that's something that you can do when you have a management company, is that you can have the management company taking care of it and split between all of them. And we're going to have on this show another guest who I met who did exactly that. He's an airline pilot. He bought his first home. He rented it. He traveled. He bought a second home. He rented it. He traveled. And he's got an amazing life doing this. Robert, do you have anything else that you would like to share before we end this?
I think we covered most of anything you need to know about short-term and long-term rentals. We didn't go too much into detail, but you have the gist. And that's the joy of having access to Michelle and I, is that if you are interested or just want to educate yourself, we never expect anything. You can reach out and we'll discuss it in further detail.
Yep. Yeah. Always happy to take calls, even if you're buying in a place that we don't manage, still happy to give you advice. Maybe one day you'll buy in a place that we manage. Nobody knows. It doesn't really matter. It's all about putting good karma into the world. So thank you so much, Robert. Thank you everyone for listening. Talk to you later. Bye.
See you guys soon.